The police were banging on my front gate, and not just one or two. There were 4 squad cars lined up at the entrance of my ranch, sirens spinning, lights flashing like I had just robbed a bank. One officer yelled through a loudspeaker, "Step away from the gate!" This is an official order. All I did was put up a metal cattle gate. I had been using the same gate for years. I had to reinforce the same gate last night after a pickup truck ran through it, again. But this time, it was different. This time, the Homeowners Association, the HOA, I didn't even belong to, had sued me. They claimed I had blocked public access to a road. They clandestinely constructed a road that cuts through the heart of my exclusive ranch. They constructed a road that was not legally recognized 3 months ago. The road sliced straight through my livestock pasture, frightening my animals and splitting my land in half as if I didn't possess it. Now they were using the police to force me to open my gate, claiming I was endangering public access. I stood my ground. I raised both hands and calmly shouted back, "This is private land. That road is illegal." An officer shouted again, "Sir, unlock the gate or we will force entry." And that's when I said the words that changed everything. Not only am I not unlocking it, every member of that HOA is now banned from stepping foot on my land. The officers froze. But it was already too late. At that precise moment, my spouse emerged, clutching a substantial bundle of paperwork. Her eyes were calm. Her voice remained steady. "I suggest you all take a look at the property lines. Before you make a mistake you'll regret." And that's when everything started to unravel. Let's rewind. My name is Jack Coleman. I'm a 56-year-old retired firefighter, and I've lived on this 100-acre ranch in Texas for nearly 2 decades. Emily. My wife works as a paralegal and is exceptionally intelligent and determined. After I retired early due to a spinal injury, we relocated to this ranch seeking peace, quiet, and ample space to raise horses and lead a dignified and kind life. I keep my affairs in order. I pay my taxes. I donate hay to local animal shelters during dry seasons and host kids from the local middle school every spring to learn about ranch life. My land is not for sale. So when a group of well-dressed newcomers moved into the newly built subdivision next to my property and formed their little HOA, I paid no attention. After all, they had their gated community. I had my land. That is until the day I saw bulldozers on my land. Initially, I believed it was a mistake. Maybe someone was clearing brush, or maybe county workers had strayed off course. But no, they were paving something. When I walked out there, shocked, confused, and limping from my old injury, 3 men in orange vests and 1 HOA board member named Curtis looked at me like I was trespassing. "May I help you?" Curtis asked, in that smug tone that made my stomach turn. I pointed at the half-formed road slicing through my lower pasture. "Yeah, what the hell is that doing on my land?" He gave a small, tight smile. It's a new access road. We voted on it. It connects the east entrance of the subdivision to Route 17. It enhances the functionality of emergency vehicles and school buses. It's part of our development plan." I laughed. I thought it was a joke, but Curtis was serious. "You should be happy. This increases the value of your property." I stared at him. "You didn't ask. You didn't notify. You didn't get a permit from me. This is my land." He shrugged. "Eminent domain laws, Jack. Look it up." He was mistaken. I did look it up. Emily looked it up even harder. She printed out maps, deeds, property surveys, and GPS markers from the county land office. That road, it wasn't on any official plan. Wasn't on. No easement. There was no formal approval from the county. No vote. Nothing. They illegally built a road on private land and then told me I had to keep it open. So I did what any self-respecting landowner would do. I put up a reinforced gate with a camera and a padlock and closed that so-called road down. Then I posted signs. Private property. No trespassing. Violators will face legal consequences. That same night, someone ran their car straight through the gate and into my fence, injuring one of my mares. They left a note on my mailbox the next morning. "Enjoy your little protest. You'll be hearing from our lawyers." And oh, I did. 2 days later, I received a lawsuit from the HOA, which claimed that I was violating their right-of-way. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table running my fingers over old photographs of my dad, who passed this ranch down to me, and wondered how we got here. We'd always taught our kids the values of kindness, respect, and standing your ground. Good people always act honorably even when no one is watching. But how do you respond when individuals deceive, cheat, and harass in public? I'll tell you what I did. I told Emily we weren't backing down. We hired a land surveyor. We contacted a real estate attorney from San Antonio, and I started documenting everything. Every car that passed through was documented with dates, times, photos, license plates, and videos. Additionally, I began researching the bylaws of the Homeowners Association HOA. It was discovered that their authority terminates precisely at the boundary of their property. But things didn't slow down. Curtis and his team intensified their efforts. They called emergency meetings, printed flyers saying I was a public danger, and even contacted the local newspaper with a hit piece titled "Man Blocks School Route for Ranch Standoff." Emily wanted to respond publicly. I told her no. We keep our heads down and let the facts speak. But then came today. When they sent the cops, they thought I'd fold, but instead they're about to learn something else. I didn't just ban them from my land. I was going to shut them down because I had more than just proof of land ownership. It was a cease and desist order filed in district court signed by a judge that very morning. And just as the officer raised his hand to order the gate to be opened, someone else pulled up in a black SUV behind the patrol cars. Curtis was not prepared for this unexpected arrival. Someone was poised to intensify his situation tenfold. The black SUV swiftly approached, its tires crunching over the gravel with a sound akin to thunder. It didn't have police markings, but the way the patrol officer straightened up the second they saw it told me everything I needed to know. Curtis, standing behind the officers in his smug button-down and HOA lanyard, took one look and paled like he'd seen a ghost. The driver's door swung open. Out stepped my wife, Emily. But this time, she wasn't just holding a stack of papers. 2 U.S. Marshals flanked her, and behind them came Judge Daniels, an older African-American man with thick glasses, a booming voice, and zero tolerance for nonsense. The entire yard went silent. "Who's in charge here?" the judge asked, his eyes moving sharply from the officers to Curtis. "I am one of the deputies," answered. "No, you're not," Judge Daniels snapped. "I am, and I have an emergency injunction order that says this land is private, this road is illegal, and the HOA is now in direct violation of state law." Curtis began to speak. However, the judge abruptly cut him off with a sharp remark. "Anybody who touches this land again, including you and your board, will face immediate arrest for contempt of court." Do I make myself clear? Curtis looked like he might faint. The officers awkwardly stepped back from the gate. One tried to mutter something about conflicting information, but Judge Daniels waved the documents in his face. "This document is a signed land deed. This is a survey. This aerial footage from the county shows that the road did not exist 3 months ago. It seems there may have been some misinformation, officer, and it would be appreciated if you could address this." Then the judge turned to me. "Mr. Coleman, do you have anything else to say?" I nodded, stepping forward slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. I have videos of HOA members crossing the gate even after I posted legal warnings. And I've identified Curtis and 2 others as having vandalized my property, including a hit and run that injured my livestock." Emily handed the USB drive to one of the marshals. Curtis backed away slowly, trying to slip behind the group. "Stay where you are," one of the marshals barked. "You're not going anywhere. But let me take you back to how all the trouble really began. Believe me, the recent events are merely the tip of the iceberg. It all started 7 months ago, the day I saw real estate developers camped out by my west fence line. They were walking the property edge with blueprints and tablets, talking loudly and laughing. One of them waved when he saw me on horseback. "Nice spot you got here, old-timer," he called out. "We're just laying plans for the new HOA community. You'll love it. It enhances the value of your property." I didn't reply. I simply stared, feeling a wave of unease wash over me. Emily later called the county records office and learnt the truth. Some firm out of Austin had purchased the 400 acres beside my land, split it into lots, and fast-tracked a development called Ridgeway Estates. Within a span of 3 months, the houses began to rise like mushrooms following a downpour. They installed elegant gates, solar-powered lights, and curved driveways. Joggers, dog walkers, and board meetings soon surrounded my peaceful rural life. But I didn't complain. It's important to accept and coexist with others. I didn't go to the HOA meetings, didn't file noise complaints, and didn't report their kids for throwing balls over my fence. I simply respected my property and maintained my tranquility. That was the case until the day they decided that my land belonged to them. Curtis knocked on my door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey neighbor," he said. "We've got this plan to improve traffic flow and reduce emergency response time. The community voted on an access road, just a little shortcut, from the east exit to the main highway. It would be great to let us use a portion of your land. You've got so much space. It won't bother you." I stared at him. "Absolutely not," I said flatly. He blinked like I had spat on him. "This road would benefit everyone," he said. "Don't be selfish. It's not like you're even using that field." I snapped, "That field is where my horses graze. And it's my private land. You don't get to decide what I do with it." Curtis chuckled. "Well, maybe not today, but I know people. This community is growing. Things change. He left after that, and I figured it was over. But I was wrong. A week later, bulldozers arrived. They claimed to be surveying with heavy equipment. I called the sheriff, who said he'd look into it. By the time the sheriff looked into the matter, the road was already halfway paved. I filed complaints. No response. Emily went deeper. She discovered something terrifying. The HOA had submitted fake documents to the county saying they had an easement through a stretch of abandoned property, and that abandoned property was my ranch. They literally forged a map and said I no longer existed. I couldn't believe it. We sent letters, emails, and threats of lawsuits. Nothing worked. They ignored every message. Then came the cars, kids racing across my fields, and strangers stopping by my barn thinking it was a clubhouse. One guy even asked if he could host a wedding in the open space. Emily cried one night. This is everything we worked for, Jack. Everything. I hugged her and told her we'd fight it. We started reinforcing our fences. We added motion lights, cameras, and gates. Then someone ran the gate down and hurt my horse. That's when I knew the matter wasn't just a boundary issue. This was a war. Emily went full paralegal mode, drowning letters, compiling evidence, and digging into land laws. I started recording every car, every conversation, and every delivery driver who thought he was in the subdivision. That's how we built our case. And that's why when the police showed up, I wasn't surprised. What they didn't expect was that my wife had already filed for a stop in court that morning, and Judge Daniels had signed it without delay. Now, with the law on our side, and Curtis frozen in front of a federal marshal, I thought maybe the storm was over. But as the marshal started escorting Curtis to his car, one of them looked down at a sheet of paper and paused. He frowned. Jack, he said while raising an eyebrow, you're going to want to see this. He held out the paper. It was a new map, a development plan. And this one showed not just the road through my pasture, but a community park, a pond, future expansion zones labeled Phase 2, Phase 3, and a clubhouse area. All of it is on my land. I looked at Emily. She was already dialing her phone, and I knew this was far from over. I gazed at the map in my hands with a sense of urgency. Jack, Emily's voice was low, sharp, like a warning. This story isn't just about the road. They were planning to take your land, all of it. They intended to seize not only my horse pasture and shortcut, but also my barn, my workshop, and our family's ancient oak tree where we interred my father's ashes. They marked everything meticulously akin to a blueprint for a shopping mall. Park benches here, a walking trail there, and a playground where my cattle corral stood. The marshal leaned in and tapped the bottom corner. This document is filed with the city planning office, submitted last week. I felt my heart sink. What category was it filed under? Community expansion zone, he replied. They labeled it a vacant HOA reserve space. Emily nearly dropped her phone. That's a lie. Jack's land isn't vacant. It's registered, taxed, and in use. The judge, who was still standing nearby, exhaled deeply and clenched his nose. This is getting bigger than just a land dispute. We might be looking at civil fraud, possibly criminal. You need to get a federal land attorney. Now. Curtis, who had been silent while the officers questioned him, suddenly spoke up. This is all a mistake, he muttered. Our documents were filed by the previous project manager. It's not my fault. I was just following the expansion plan, but no one was buying it. Curtis was more than just a board member. He was also a silent partner in the real estate group that developed Ridgeway Estates. Emily had unearthed that crucial information during her investigation. And now, with a judge and 2 U.S. Marshals present, we had the kind of audience you don't lie to. Still, I tried to stay calm. I didn't want revenge. I wanted my land back. I wanted my peace, my space, the safety of my animals, and my life back. And that's when the judge said something I'll never forget, Jack. You have every legal right to not only block access to your land, but to pursue restitution. But you need to understand, this won't end quietly. These individuals will attempt to access your land again. He was right. The very next morning, I woke up to find that my fence had been cut. Again. This time, it wasn't just a single gate. It was 4 sections of barbed wire cut clean with bolt cutters. My horses wandered dangerously close to the HOA road before a kind neighbor corralled them back. The cameras are all disabled. Someone had spray painted over the lenses. They were sending a message. We were in a state of conflict. Emily stormed into the house around 7 a.m., holding one of our no trespassing signs, ripped in half with the words, "This isn't over," scrawled across the back in black marker. "I'm calling the sheriff again," she fumed, "and I'm getting the media involved. They don't know who they're dealing with." But I stopped her. Not yet. I had a better plan. I pulled out the folder I'd been quietly preparing. While Emily was constructing the legal case, I was constructing a case tailored to my needs. I was building a case for the community. I had statements from our neighbors, photos of HOA trucks parked on my land, and video clips from other ranchers in Texas who'd faced the same shady tactics and then something better. A whistleblower, yes sir. One of the construction workers who had helped pave the road through my ranch had reached out anonymously. He sent me screenshots of messages from Curtis and other board members who were openly joking about how easy it was to steal land when the owner is just an old cowboy. That same worker sent me a PDF and internal memo where they bragged that by the time anyone noticed, the road would be in and the county wouldn't bother reversing it. They were banking on me giving up. Instead, I was about to blow it up. The next day, Emily filed our formal lawsuit in civil court, suing the Ridgeway HOA for property damage, unlawful trespassing, attempted land seizure, and emotional distress. We also filed a formal complaint with the Office of the Texas Attorney General. Then I did one more thing. I posted the story photos, maps, and videos. I uploaded it all to Reddit, then to Facebook, then to the local news Facebook group where half the town gets their info. I wrote the truth plainly. HOA built a legal road through my ranch and then sued me for blocking it. Now they want the rest of my land. The post went viral overnight. The post garnered thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, and above all, unwavering support. People started sending me similar stories from their towns. Ex-HOA board members offered legal tips. Ranchers offered to help me repair fences. A local news reporter asked to do a feature. I wasn't alone anymore, but that didn't mean things got easier because 2 nights later, I caught a group of teenagers, probably from the HOA neighborhood, sneaking onto my land with cans of gasoline. They were going to set fire to my barn. I had them on camera. I called the sheriff, who caught them minutes later hiding behind my hay bales. The sheriff arrested the kids, but guess what? One of them was Curtis's son. You'd think that would have ended things, but no. The very next day, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Another lawsuit. This time, the HOA was accusing me of harassment. They claimed I was inciting public hatred, endangering children, and creating a hostile environment for the Ridgeway community. I stared at the papers, jaw clenched. Emily said, "They're throwing everything at us, hoping we'll crack," but I didn't. I had already strategized my next course of action. I planned to legally, permanently, and with full force of the law, forbid the entire HOA from ever setting foot on my property. Who was the judge? Judge Daniels was about to grant me something most landowners only dream of. Judge Daniels was poised to bestow upon me an exclusive protective easement order. The order extended beyond simply restricting access. It gave me the power to fence off every inch, place permanent blockades, and have any trespasser arrested without warning. That hearing was tomorrow. I had just received a call from my lawyer who had one last twist to share. The HOA had tried to tamper with county records. The authorities caught them. Now the district attorney was involved, and someone, possibly Curtis himself, was facing criminal charges. But just before I could finish celebrating that news, a loud bang rang out behind the house. I ran out back. The sight I beheld almost brought my heart to a halt. My barn, the same one where I kept our horses, feed and gear, was now on fire. The flames reached into the night sky, like angry red fingers licking the darkness, and turning my peaceful ranch into a war zone. My barn, my father's barn, was going up in flames. "Call 911, I shouted at the top of my lungs, sprinting toward the fire, with my old fireman instincts kicking in. Emily was already on her phone, her voice shaking as she gave our address to dispatch. "It's our barn. The barn has completely taken over. The animals, Jack and the horses, are all present." I didn't even wait. I burst into the barn with nothing but a wet towel over my face. My eyes stung. Smoke filled my lungs. I could barely see, but I could hear them, my horses screaming in fear. I opened stalls one by one, slapping the rear of each horse to drive them toward the open back gate. "Go, get out," I yelled, coughing so hard I could barely breathe. One by one, their hooves thundered into the open pasture. Ember, my oldest mare, was limping and scared, but she made it out. I wrapped a lead around her neck and guided her out just before a beam collapsed behind us. We barely made it. I turned around in time to see half the barn roof cave in. Emily ran to me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders, coughing and crying. "You're okay. You're okay. You got them all out." But I couldn't even respond. I just stared at the burning wreckage and thought of my dad. He built that barn with his hands in 1973. Now it was ash. The fire department arrived 10 minutes later, too late to save anything. They managed to stop the flames from spreading to the feed shed or the tool garage, but the barn was gone. When the sheriff arrived, he pulled me aside. "We found an accelerant," he said quietly. "Gasoline. This was arson." Emily went pale. Could it possibly have been the HOA? The sheriff looked grim. "We've arrested Curtis's son before, haven't we? And there have been multiple reports of people trespassing in that neighborhood. I can't say for sure yet, but we've opened a full investigation." I suggest you get one. I didn't have to. I knew this in my heart. This wasn't just about land anymore. This was personal, but let me be clear. I wasn't looking for revenge. That wasn't me. I'm a man of principle of peace. I only wanted justice and protection. I wanted protection for my land, my wife, my animals. And that's precisely what I got the very next morning. Judge Daniels had scheduled us to appear again. On this occasion, I presented a comprehensive request for a protective easement, along with a fire investigation report to back it up. I stood in that courtroom with soot still on my boots, Emily holding my hand, never looked more determined. Curtis was there too, but this time he didn't look smug, he looked scared. The judge received a sealed file from the DA's assistant just before the hearing started. He read it silently. Then he looked up. "Mr. Coleman," he said, "this court is now in possession of video footage showing 3 individuals. 2 of them, HOA board members, entering your property the night of the fire carrying gas cans and wearing masks." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Curtis's lawyer turned white. The judge continued. "The footage also confirms a 3rd individual, your son Mr. Curtis, pouring gasoline around the barn. I am issuing warrants for all 3. Curtis's mouth opened wide in shock. I didn't know he stammered. I didn't authorize it. But it didn't matter. Judge Daniels banged his gavel. "Judge Daniels suspends this hearing. Curtis Williams, you are under investigation for conspiracy to commit arson and fraudulent land seizure." 2 officers stepped forward and placed Curtis in handcuffs. Emily exhaled sharply beside me. I squeezed her hand. The situation wasn't over, but it was changing. Later that afternoon, we received the ruling. The court had officially granted us a permanent protective land easement order. That meant no one from Ridgeway HOA could step foot on our property. Any attempt to use our land would result in instant arrest. All road use through our land was now permanently revoked. We could establish a legal blockade at any point on the land perimeter. They also recommended that I file a civil case for damages, but I had other priorities. I returned home and walked the fence line with Emily. The barn still smoldered. The charred beams lay like broken bones across the ground, but my horses were safe. My land was quiet again. What happened to the road that used to cut through my pasture? A new steel gate and the boulders we manually hauled in blocked off the area. But there was one thing that stuck with me. The expression on Curtis's face as the handcuffs tightened around his wrists was unforgettable. There was a look of disbelief in his eyes, like he couldn't understand why this was happening. He appeared to be the one who suffered. That's the thing about people like him. They don't see land. They see opportunity. They don't see legacy. They see leverage. When someone tells them no, they don't listen. They just try to take it. But I had built this life with my own hands, and no man, no HOA, no fake document or crooked deal was going to steal it from me. Especially not when I had something stronger than power. I had truth. I had the support of a whole community. Despite the arrests and the signing of the order, a sense of unease lingered. 2 nights later, I received a package in the mail. The package arrived without a return address. The package included a drone photo of my ranch. A red X has been drawn across my house, and one sentence was scrawled in marker. "You're not safe yet." I sat in the kitchen, holding the photo, the overhead light flickering slightly above me. My fingers trembled. My trembling was not from fear, but from fury. Emily stood motionless across the table, her gaze fixed on the red X symbolizing our roof. The message written below the red X was not merely a threat. It was a warning. "Someone who is still out there believes that the situation isn't finished yet." Emily's voice broke the silence. "Jack, this means someone's watching us right now." I nodded slowly. They still haven't finished. The local sheriff arrived within an hour of my call and examined the package I showed him. He looked at the envelope inside. The photo had no fingerprints and no return address. They wore gloves. He leaned against this counter, arms crossed. I bet anything it's someone still tied to the HOA. Maybe someone's scared about what Curtis might say now that he's been arrested. That made sense. Curtis's actions were unexpected. 2 days ago, under pressure and facing felony charges, he agreed to cooperate. He'd already told investigators about a secret HOA fund. The money was raised from fake emergency repair fees and funneled into bribes, payments to private contractors, and attempts to buy out land. He claimed he wasn't the mastermind. He said someone else on the board was behind it all. That someone, he didn't give a name. Yet. But the drone photo, that was proof someone still wanted to scare us into silence. Emily locked every door and window that night. We took turns keeping watch in shifts. I sat by the front window with my old rifle, the one my father gave me after my first rodeo win at 17. Around 2:40 a.m., the motion lights behind the barn flashed on. With a flashlight and rifle in hand, I dashed out the back door, my heart thumping with adrenaline. And what I found? A drone hovered just 30 feet above my roof, silently blinking. I didn't hesitate. I raised my rifle and fired. Crack! The drone sparked, spun, and crashed into the gravel beside the gate. Emily came running. What happened? I held up the smoking rack. They were watching. We called the sheriff again, and this time, he took the broken drone straight to evidence. He promised to trace it through serial numbers. The next morning, my lawyer called. Jack, he said, you're not going to believe this. I braced myself. The HOA's president, Sandra Beck. She just fled town. Sandra. I blinked. Did she bring cookies to the initial HOA picnic and express a desire to enhance the community's beauty? That's the one. She just emptied her HOA account nearly $120,000 and disappeared. Turns out Sandra wasn't just the face of the HOA. She was also responsible for hiring the private contractors who paved the road that runs through my property. She signed the altered county documents. She organized the fraudulent vote to label my land as vacant. Curtis, he was her puppet. And now that he was squealing, she was gone. However, she didn't conceal her activities as effectively as she initially believed. Within days, a federal investigator found her trail. Her trail included bank transfers, emails, and phone logs. Everything led back to her. The DOJ was preparing charges. Meanwhile, Emily and I made a choice. We were going to hold a town meeting. We held the meeting not only for ourselves, but also for all the ranchers, homeowners, and retirees in our region who had encountered this type of HOA overreach. We rented the local Grange Hall, printed flyers, and sent out invites. Over 80 people showed up. Some were ranchers like me, tired of new developments encroaching on their land. Some were single parents who had received fines for leaving their children's bikes on the porch. Others included veterans, retirees, teachers, and individuals silenced by bullying. We shared our story. We discussed the illegal road, the falsified maps, the arson, and the drone. People were furious. However, they also felt inspired. By the end of the meeting, we had formed a new alliance, Residents Against HOA Overreach. We created a petition for the county to audit every HOA in the district. Within a week, we had over 1,500 signatures. It hit the local news, then state news, then national headlines. Suddenly, HOA Karen culture wasn't just a joke on Reddit. It became a serious problem, with real people actively fighting back. But even with the legal win, the arrests, and the growing support, something still bothered me. Curtis called me one night. It was from the county jail. I almost didn't answer, but I did. His voice was quiet, beaten down. Jack, I just wanted to say I was wrong. You didn't deserve any of this. I stayed silent. Then he added, but I wasn't lying when I said Sandra wasn't the only one. There's another, the real person behind the fun, behind the threats. I only helped because they promised me I'd be rich. I gripped the phone tighter. Who, Curtis? He hesitated. Then, you already met him. Remember that person in the blue blazer at the first Ridgeway barbecue? His name's Troy Maddox. He's the developer who sold Ridgeway the land. He's also the one who forged the easement papers. He's dangerous, Jack. If he finds out, I told you he'll come after me. He might even target you. I hung up slowly. That was a name I had heard before. Troy Maddox. Troy Maddox was a flashy, smooth-talking businessman who boasted about his ability to turn dirt into diamonds. He drove a black Mercedes and wore sunglasses even indoors. I'd seen him twice, once at the HOA's launch party, and once parked outside my fence months before all this started. He had connections, big ones. Should he truly be the mastermind behind this plan, Curtis and Sandra would merely serve as pawns. And the danger wasn't just about my land. It was about every ranch, every field, and every open space left in this part of Texas. The threat wasn't over. It was just beginning. And as I stood by my broken barn that evening watching the sunset over my battle-scarred land, I realized something. They might have burnt my barn, but they just lit a fire in me. Because I was going after Troy Maddox next, and I wasn't going to stop until every stolen acre was reclaimed. The name, Troy Maddox, echoed in my mind like a gunshot in a canyon. Everything suddenly made sense. Curtis and Sandra. They were loud, flashy, and easy to spot. But Troy, he was the shadow behind the real estate shark, with the $1 million smile, and a handshake that probably signed more lies than contracts. I still remembered the first time I saw him. It was at the Ridgeway Welcome BBQ over a year ago, before any of this nightmare began. He'd walked up to me with a plastic cup of lemonade, dressed in a navy blazer, no tie, and a Rolex that caught the Texas sun like diamonds. Jack Wright, he'd said, offering his hand. Heard this land's been in your family for generations. You have a truly impressive estate. I shook his hand stiffly. Appreciate that. He smiled. Look, I know you're probably tired of people trying to buy you out, but I'm not like them. I'm a problem solver. So if you ever get tired of fences and horses and lawsuits, give me a call. I smile in a way that prompts you to double check whether your wallet is still in your back pocket. Back then, I didn't think much of it. But now I knew. He wasn't just watching from a distance. He was exerting complete control. Curtis confirmed it in his confession. Sandra had already made her admission before she left town. The drone photo featuring the red X was significant. It was Troy's signature message. He wanted me off this land, so I decided it was time to hit back. I called a friend, Will Johnson, a retired federal investigator turned private detective. Will owed me a favor. Years ago, I helped save his horses during a barn fire when he was out of town. I told him everything. I told him about the road, the fake maps, the arrests, and the drone. Will agreed to dig into Troy Maddox, and in just 3 days, he came back with a mountain of dirt. Troy's not just shady, Will said. He's a criminal. Troy faced 6 lawsuits in 3 different states for land misrepresentation, illegal development, zoning fraud, and bribery. He'd paid hush money to 2 former board members in Colorado. In Nevada, he destroyed protected wetlands, received a fine, but failed to pay it. However, the most shocking part is yet to come. He'd just filed a new proposal with the state for a green living luxury compound. The proposal was to be built on my land. The court's decision in my favor was still in effect, even after the fire. His board members were placed under arrest. Troy was betting I'd walk away. He was mistaken. Emily and I filed a new motion in court, not just for civil damages, but for a restraining land injunction against Troy Maddox himself. Our lawyer, Michelle Cortez, a hard-nosed litigator from Dallas, with a voice like a buzzsaw, walked into court with a thick binder and a mission. This man, she told the judge, has committed fraud, violated environmental codes, threatened a landowner, and used stolen HOA funds to fuel an illegal development campaign. Troy had a lawyer too. Troy wore a slick suit and carried an alligator skin briefcase. A man paid to smile and say, "My client denies all allegations." But when Michelle dropped Will's dossier on the judge's desk, and when we handed over Curtis's signed confession, it was game over. Judge Daniels issued a court order. Troy Maddox was to cease all development activities in the Ridgeway area. Judge Daniels prohibited Troy Maddox from entering my property or reaching out to me in any manner. All future zoning applications tied to him were now flagged for review. Troy stood there blinking, stunned, and then he looked at me, not with fear, but with rage, like I'd humiliated him in front of the whole world. As he walked out of the courtroom, he muttered under his breath, "This isn't the end." I smiled. "It is for you." But just when we thought we could finally breathe, another blow came. The county emailed us a notification. It said Ridgeway HOA has filed a new petition for emergency public access through Coleman Ranch, claiming vital community access requires temporary reinstatement of the previous road. Emily screamed when she read it. "They're trying again, after everything." I called our lawyer, furious. "What justifies this?" she sighed. "HOAs possess financial resources which can delay legal proceedings. They're hoping to drag this out until you're exhausted or bankrupt." That night, I sat in the dark with Ember, my old mare, brushing her mane as she nuzzled my shoulder. And I made a decision. I was going to finish this project once and for all. There would be no more lawsuits. There would be no more waiting. The next morning, I started calling the media. I gave interviews. I posted everything. I shared every document, video, and confession on social media. I invited news crews to tour the ranch. I even started a GoFundMe campaign called Protect Our Land, Protect Our Future, and donations poured in from across the country. People's frustration was palpable. People were fed up with bullies in suits stealing land and silencing voices. And then something unexpected happened. A state senator from Texas, Senator Dolores Ray, called me personally. "I've seen your story, Mr. Coleman," she said, "and I think it's time we change some laws." She introduced a bill that same month. She designed the Landowner Protection Act to prevent HOAs from expanding beyond their original zones, enforce stricter zoning laws, and criminalize fake easement filings. The bill gained traction. My story was the headline. Suddenly, Troy Maddox, the bully behind the scenes, found himself publicly exposed. Real estate partners dropped him. His progress halted. He lost everything. And as the sun set behind my repaired fences, Emily and I sat on our porch, hands intertwined. "You did it, Jack," she said. "No," I whispered. "We did it." Just as peace returned, and the news trucks packed up, a sleek black SUV pulled into the gravel outside my gate. It wasn't Troy. It was someone else. It was a man in a tailored gray suit stepped out. He raised a white envelope and said, "Mr. Coleman, you've been served." Another legal document, but this time, the name of the sender is the Federal Land Bureau of Development. And the letter reads, "Notice of Federal Interest in Land Acquisition Project 17A. You are within a designated zone for future federal infrastructure. Negotiations will begin immediately." I stood there silent. Then I whispered, "Now it's the government." I held the envelope like it was a live grenade. "Federal Land Bureau of Development," I muttered under my breath, reading the bold black ink on the paper as my heart thudded in my chest. Emily came to my side, brushing dirt off her jeans as she peered over my shoulder. "Jack, what is this?" I unfolded the letter. "We hereby notify you that the 17A Federal Infrastructure Corridor's projected development zone includes your property. The property is not a compulsory acquisition at this time. However, initial discussions for voluntary sale and access coordination will begin within 30 to 30 days. I dropped the paper onto the porch floorboards and ran both hands through my hair. It was happening all over again, but this time it wasn't Curtis. It wasn't Sandra. It wasn't even slick-talking Troy Maddox. It was the government. Emily's voice shook. "After all we've been through, they still want our land." I nodded slowly, already piecing it together. This 17A corridor, whatever it was, must have been in the works for a while, maybe even longer than Ridgeway Estates. It explained why Maddox was so confident, why Curtis acted like he owned the place. They were pawns in something bigger. I called our lawyer, Michelle Cortez. She didn't sound surprised. "Jack, I've been hearing whispers about this for months. The 17A project is supposed to be a high-speed transport corridor running across county lines. But here's the thing, they're targeting rural properties first. They think landowners won't fight back. They thought wrong." I growled. Michelle sighed. "They haven't filed for eminent domain yet. That's important. Right now, it's just a voluntary negotiation. You have leverage." But I knew how it would go. First they ask, then they push, then they take. We'd seen it all before. A landowner gets a friendly letter, then a surveyor shows up, then someone accidentally tears down your fence. Before you realize it, your options are limited and bulldozers are roaring across your pasture. This time, things were different. Emily and I spent that night digging calling ranchers in other counties, comparing notes, and watching old hearings online. The next morning, we called a press conference right here on our ranch. A makeshift podium was set up near the still-scorched barn foundation. News crews lined up in the dirt, microphones and cameras ready. I stepped up holding the letter in my hand. "My name is Jack Coleman. This ranch has been in my family for nearly 100 years. Over the past year, I've been harassed, sued, stalked, burnt out, and lied to by private developers and HOA members who tried to steal what generations of honest work built." I paused, looking at every camera in the lens. "And now the federal government wants to try the same thing." Gasps. Reporters scribbled. "This isn't just my fight anymore," I continued. "They want this corridor to run through every open piece of land they can find. But they forgot one thing. We're not just landowners. We're families, workers, veterans, Americans, and we don't just give up." The crowd cheered. Later that day, Jaxer's Stand with Jack started trending. By evening, over 100,000 people had signed a petition to protect rural landowners from forced federal development. Senators called. News anchors ran my speech. I even got a letter of support from a group of veterans in Montana. But we still had a legal problem. The Land Bureau refused to budge. A week later, a new letter arrived. This one wasn't a request. It was a notice of intent to survey the land. That meant federal agents had permission to step foot on my ranch even without my say-so, unless I got creative, and I did. With Michelle's help, we filed for a special agricultural heritage designation. We proved my land was of historic and cultural value used for veteran therapy programs, school education, and horse rescue rehab. It slowed the process. However, it didn't halt the progress. So I called for a favor. Remember the alliance we built residents against HOA overreach? Well, we had grown. We now have more than 1,000 members in 5 different states, and I asked them all for one thing: come to my ranch. And they did. They arrived in trucks, campers, RVs, and on horseback. They included veterans, teachers, ranchers, and students. They lined the roads, stood shoulder to shoulder at my property line. Did the federal agents arrive to conduct the survey? A human barrier greeted them. No yelling, no violence, just people. We are holding signs that proclaim "you can't steal roots. This land is our story. We stand with Jack." The federal team backed off. They sent a statement to the press saying we are reviewing our next steps, but we knew what that meant. They weren't going away. So Emily had one last idea. "Let's make the land untouchable," she said. "How?" I asked. "We turn it into a non-profit conservancy, protected, registered. This is a place that can never be sold, never be seized." It took weeks. There was an overwhelming amount of paperwork involved. But with donations from around the country and help from a group of pro bono attorneys, we filed the final papers. The Coleman Family Ranch Conservancy. We had successfully protected our land forever. No HOA, no developer, no government, no one could intervene. The next morning, I stood by the rebuilt barn. Ember grazed quietly nearby. Her leg healed. The wind was soft. The sunrise is golden. Emily wrapped her arms around my waist. "It's finally over," she whispered. I nodded. We didn't just win. We protected something far bigger than ourselves. And if you're out there facing an HOA that's threatening your peace, a developer knocking at your door, or a bully trying to tell you what's yours, remember this. You have a voice. Use it. You have rights. Defend them. And you are never alone. This land, it's not just dirt, it's home.